Putin's big plan to save Kursk, it's turning into a disaster. When he signed a deal with North Korea in 2024, Putin thought he had the perfect answer to his problems. Thousands of North Korean soldiers would flood into Kursk, help Russia push Ukraine back, and prove that he wasn't as isolated as the West claimed. He likely pictured himself turning the tide of the war with his so-called allies by his side. Spoiler alert, that's not happening. Instead, his plan is falling apart. North Korea sent up to 12,000 troops to Kursk to join a 50,000-strong counteroffensive aimed at reclaiming territory Ukraine seized in its surprise August invasion. But in just 2 months, Ukraine has decimated over 30% of those troops, exposing just how unprepared and outmatched they are on the battlefield. These weren't just any reinforcements. Putin and Kim Jong-un sold them as elite soldiers. Turns out, they're cannon fodder. In this video, we'll break down what's happening to the North Koreans in Kursk, why they're failing so miserably, and what it all means for Putin's desperate war effort. We start with a question. How do we know that Ukraine has destroyed a third of the North Korean contingent in Kursk? The answer is that it all came directly out of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's mouth. On January 5, 2025, Zelensky appeared on an episode of the Lex Fridman podcast. That episode, which already has over 4 million views on YouTube, saw Ukraine's president speak on topics as varied as potentially meeting President-elect Donald Trump, the potential upcoming peace negotiations with Russia, and the future of Ukraine. But one of the most illuminating portions of the podcast saw Zelensky talk about what's happening in Kursk right now. Kursk is an evolving battlefield. When Ukraine launched its August 2024 counter-invasion into the Russian oblast, it quickly snatched up territory and settlements. Within a couple of weeks, Ukraine held around 90 settlements and 450 square miles of land, almost equaling the amount of territory Russia has managed to take in Ukraine between January and August 2024. Putin was naturally furious. His own poor defenses had allowed the invasion to happen, with the loss of land being the first to occur in Russia since World War II. But Putin was slow on the draw to do anything about it at first. It wasn't until around November that he started preparing a counteroffensive in earnest, and it soon became apparent why he waited so long. Russia's Kursk counteroffensive was going to include the 12,000 or so soldiers shipped to the country from North Korea a month prior. The cooperative defense pact with Kim had been triggered, and Russia had a source of new soldiers. Fast forward to today, and Zelensky revealed exactly what's happening to those 12,000 North Korean troops. 12,000 have arrived, Zelensky told Friedman. Today, 3,800 killed or wounded. It's the largest estimate delivered yet for the number of casualties experienced by North Korean soldiers in Kursk, and it amounts to over 30% of the attacking force Kim sent to Putin. Other sources seem to be sharing similar numbers. As Business Insider reports, the US believed that Ukraine managed to take out over 1,000 North Korean soldiers in a single week in December, thanks in large part to those soldiers being part of mass dismounted attacks. In other words, North Koreans are being sent in on foot to attack well-fortified Ukrainian positions, and they're being cut down in the hundreds. Zelensky didn't offer up these figures to brag about the power of the Ukrainian military versus North Korea's. He believes that North Korea shouldn't even be a part of the fight at all. Toward the end of December, Ukraine's president spoke about the significance of North Korea's losses during one of his nightly video addresses. He said that the North Korean troops should not be losing their lives in battles in Europe, before calling on China to influence Pyongyang into keeping its soldiers out of Russia. Still, there was context to the North Korean casualty figures beyond Zelensky attempting to scare Kim away. Zelensky's appearance on Fridman's podcast comes just a couple of weeks before President-elect Donald Trump is set to take office. Trump was a key focus of the 3-hour discussion, with Business Insider suggesting that Zelensky offered up the North Korean casualty rate figures as part of a larger argument about the dangers presented to Europe if the US leaves NATO. Less support for NATO means more opportunities for Russia to use foreign soldiers to overrun other countries. Zelensky wants to make it clear that Ukraine is already doing what NATO is supposed to do. Trump choosing to have the US leave NATO at such a critical juncture would so substantially weaken Europe that Putin would feel confident enough to welcome even more of Kim's troops into his country. Or as Zelensky more pointedly put it, Putin will destroy Europe if Trump chooses to leave NATO. After all, Europe is less able to quickly raise massive armies than North Korea, claims Ukraine's leader. North Korea, being an autocracy, many would say a dictatorship, means its people can be called upon to go and fight at a moment's notice. Can Europe bring people together? No, claims Zelensky. Will Europe be able to build an army consisting of 2 to 3 million people? No, Europe will not want to do this. That's why Ukraine's president is still pushing for the US to send more weapons, even as his troops decimate the North Korean soldiers. In late December, he said, "It's very important that the United States is currently increasing supplies. when speaking about more military aid from the US. "This is necessary to balance the situation. I am grateful to our partners. The pace of supply must become such as to disrupt the pace of Russian assaults." The speed of Russia's assaults have only been enhanced by its access to North Korean troops, which is why it's so important that Ukraine is inflicting such heavy casualties. So the 3,800 figure isn't a boast by Ukraine's leader. Instead, he's trying to show the rest of the world, particularly the US, the sheer scale of the threat North Korea now poses to Europe. Those 3,800 foreign soldiers are just a third of what Kim has sent to Putin. And if Trump decides to withdraw the US from NATO, Zelensky appears to be arguing, it will just mean a massive door is left open for Putin to terrorize Europe with even more North Korean soldiers. Still, 3,800 North Korean casualties is a lot, considering those troops have only been involved in the fighting in Kursk for a little over 2 months. That leads us to an obvious question. Why are so many North Korean soldiers dying in droves during Russia's counteroffensive against Ukraine? There are a few reasons, starting with Putin's intention when he brought those troops into Russia in the first place. He sees them as little more than cannon fodder. The opinion has been shared multiple times since Putin welcomed Kim's soldiers into Russia. Reporting in early November 2024, The Independent pointed out that many of the leaders of the countries in the Group of Seven, or G7, feel that Russia's decision to bring in North Korean troops was a sign of desperation. To them, Putin is trying to bolster his numbers in any way he can during a war that's already seen Russia experience around 803,000 casualties. Daily troop losses are hovering around the 1,500 to 2,000 mark, and have already broken the 2,000 barrier several times in November and December, meaning that Russia is dealing with a massive soldier churn rate. Putin needs bodies to make up the numbers, and that's precisely what the North Korean soldiers are, according to a former first lieutenant in the North Korean army named Choi Jong-un. Speaking to The Independent, he says, "None would think that they are going to Russia to die," when speaking about Putin's North Korean soldiers. "But I think they're cannon fodder because they will be sent to the most dangerous sites and will surely be killed." What we're seeing with this massive number of North Korean deaths is that Choi was right. The North Korean soldiers arriving in Russia, which apparently included 500 officers, 3 generals, and members of North Korea's so-called elite Storm Corps, have no direct combat experience. They've faced nothing more than North Korea's haphazard military training. More on that later. And they had no idea what they would be stepping into once they reached the front lines in Kursk. Zelensky agreed with Choi's opinion after Ukraine inflicted the first few of what would become 3,800 casualties on the North Korean forces. He told Japan's Kyodo news agency that early signs indicated Putin intended to use Kim's soldiers as cannon fodder. South Korea's defense minister, Kim Jong-un, said the same thing during a press briefing with the US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin in October 2024. Kim Jong-un doesn't hesitate to sell out his young people and troops as cannon fodder mercenaries. But all of these claims came before North Korean troops started deploying in earnest in Kursk. Has the reality of the fighting matched the expectation? It absolutely has. About a week before Zelensky made the 3,800 casualties claim on Friedman's podcast, National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby said that Putin was using his North Korean soldiers as part of human wave assaults. These attacks involve sending in masses of soldiers, often on foot, to attack Ukrainian defensive positions. The Ukrainian troops shot the first wave down, only to see it followed by another and then another, all with the intent of forcing Ukraine to burn through its ammunition. Kirby said the North Korean soldiers are being sent into these hopeless assaults, which is why over 1,000 were killed or injured in the week leading up to December 28, 2024. Putin's tactical ineptitude is also why North Korea lost 3,800 soldiers before the end of the first week of January 2025. There's also North Korean indoctrination to consider when looking for reasons why so many North Koreans are dying in Kursk. The soldiers Putin has received are told that it's far better to die on the battlefield than it is to be captured by Ukrainian forces. That's why we've seen so few captures thus far. Ukraine says it's managed to take a handful of North Koreans as prisoners, only to see them die soon after. According to Zelensky, all were severely wounded and it was not possible to save their lives. Kirby believes that many North Korean soldiers are choosing to commit suicide on the battlefield rather than allow their own capture. Why? Likely out of fear of reprisal against their families in the event that they're captured, claims Kirby. The precise number of North Koreans who've chosen death by their own hands ahead of capture isn't clear. However, Kirby's comments cast a whole new light on what one of Kim's soldiers faces when they arrive in Russia. These are soldiers whose entire lives are monitored back home. When they arrive in Russia, that monitoring continues through the 500 or so officers North Korea has sent as part of the 12,000 troops. What choice does a North Korean soldier have in that situation? They're trained never to be captured by the enemy, and they know they're being watched at all times. Stepping out of line will lead to terrible repercussions against their families if Kirby is to be believed. So a North Korean soldier on the front lines in Kursk either has to rush headlong as part of Putin's human wave attacks, knowing that they're likely going to be shredded by Ukrainian bullets and artillery, or kill themselves if they face the prospect of capture. Choice seems to be between death and death, and that only emphasizes how Russia, and perhaps even North Korea, views these soldiers as cannon fodder to be sent to the slaughter. A third of these North Koreans are already dead, because dying is the entire reason they were brought to Russia in the first place. Well, that and the fact that none of these North Korean troops were particularly well trained to begin with. Therein lies another reason a third of North Korea's forces in Kursk are already dead or injured. They don't know how to fight. We touched on this earlier when we noted that none of the 12,000 soldiers will have ever seen any sort of direct combat engagement with an enemy. All of their knowledge comes from training, and that's simply nowhere near the standards expected of a modern military. Former member of North Korea's Storm Corps and modern-day defector Han revealed as much to the BBC in December 2024. He says that even the elite of North Korea's army are underfed, surviving on a diet of moldy cabbage and cracked corn during training, and graduating to rice cut with sand once they're deployed. Those soldiers barely even fire bullets when they're in training, with Han claiming to have only shot 3 live rounds before he was deployed to the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea. As for other training, another Storm Corps defector, named Lee Hyun-sung, says that he used to teach his soldiers martial arts and how to make weapons out of kitchen utensils. North Korean soldiers are training on how to bring knives and forks to an artillery and drone fight. That lack of training impacted what Putin could do with the North Koreans he received from Kim, and reinforces the reason why so many have been used as cannon fodder against Ukraine. They weren't good enough to be anything else, and to make matters worse, the North Korean soldiers started to pick up bad habits once they arrived in Russia. That's according to a December 2024 article in The Telegraph. It says that people are cheap in general to Putin, and that goes double for his North Korean soldiers. When those troops arrive in Kursk, they're trained to mirror the human wave assaults the bulk of Russia's forces have been using in Ukraine. Infantry attacks Ukrainian positions on foot, just as Kirby claims. When a combination of Ukrainian mines, artillery, and drones wipe those soldiers out, the next wave rolls in. The North Korean soldiers are being taught little more than to walk forward to their deaths, and if Hanoi is to be believed, they're barely capable of raising their rifles in anger should the opportunity to actually kill a Ukrainian present itself. As if to emphasize North Korea's complete lack of training, notebooks found on the bodies of dead soldiers reveal what Russia is teaching them when they arrive. On December 26th, Radio Free Asia reported that Ukraine had recovered a notebook from the body of a killed North Korean soldier named Jong Kyung-hong. Within its pages lay diagrams denoting the strategy these soldiers have been taught to deal with Ukrainian drone attacks. When a drone is spotted, form a team of 3, reads Jong's notes. That team of 3 includes one person as bait, who is supposed to lure the drone out of position by standing at least 23 feet away from it. The other 2 people then come up on the drone's rear, standing between 32 and 40 feet away in an attempt to shoot it down. Bear in mind that most of these soldiers have barely fired any live rounds in their training. They're now being taught to use themselves as bait in the vain hope that one of their comrades will somehow score a bullseye on a fast-moving drone before that drone shreds them to pieces or unleashes an explosive on their position. It's a ridiculous strategy. But it seems to be good enough for Russia when dealing with soldiers that it sees as little more than meat to feed into the ever-churning grinder in Kursk. A third of North Korea's soldiers are dead because of their lack of training combined with poor strategy upon arrival, and Putin's view that they're little more than cannon fodder. With that, we come to the final reason why 3,800 North Korean soldiers are dead or wounded in Kursk. Ukraine just has too much for these soldiers to handle. Poor training and Putin's cannon fodder attitude have combined to put North Korean soldiers in a position where they simply can't win against Ukraine's battle-hardened forces. We've seen that from the very first moment that troops from the two sides started clashing. When Ukraine had its first confirmed combat engagement with North Korean forces in early November 2024, it was the Ukrainians who went on the attack. That incident didn't lead to direct combat, but every engagement since has. By mid-December 2024, the US was reporting on the first North Korean casualties as a result of their deployment in Kursk, stating that at least 30 soldiers were killed or injured during a single weekend. It's only been getting worse from there for North Korea. As we mentioned earlier, North Korean troops are now being deployed in such massive numbers that it's possible for Ukraine to inflict over 1,000 casualties on them per week. In some cases, it's pulling close to those casualty numbers in a matter of days. On January 5th, reports emerged that Ukraine had destroyed an entire battalion consisting primarily of North Korean soldiers over the previous 2 days. For context, a battalion typically contains about 1,000 soldiers, meaning Ukraine may have ramped up its North Korean decimation to the point where it may be just a couple of months until Kim's troops are exhausted. And Ukraine doesn't look to be slowing down anytime soon. It's in the midst of a counter-offensive in Kursk at the time of this video's creation. On January 7th, the Kyiv Post reported that the Ukrainian Special Operations Forces, or SSO, had killed more than a dozen North Korean soldiers during a single gunfight. resulting from that counteroffensive. Posting to its Telegram channel, the SSO said that it had killed 5 North Koreans in a gunfight, with a further 8 dying due to drone strikes. We guess the bait and surround tactics taught to Kim's soldiers by Russia weren't much use after all. Documents recovered from the bodies after the fight revealed that one of the dead soldiers was an officer in the North Korean army, showing us that even the best Kim has to offer can't do much in the face of Ukraine's attacks. We conclude with one more question. What happens now that 3,800 North Koreans and counting are dead or wounded in Kursk? The odds are that Kim is going to double down on his relationship with Putin. That shouldn't come as a surprise. North Korea has to be getting something in return for the soldiers it's shipping over to Russia, with that something likely to be a combination of oil, money, and military secrets. All 3 are high-value items for President Kim, which is why it's believed that he's about to start rotating his troops in Russia. That's according to Dmytro Ponomarenko, Ukraine's ambassador to South Korea. He said back in November that the number of North Korean soldiers in Russia could reach 15,000 soon, with those soldiers being on a rotation schedule that sees them rotated out of circulation every 2 to 3 months. If we assume a 2-month rotation, that will mean 6 fresh batches of 15,000 soldiers annually, amounting to around 90,000 soldiers in total over the course of a year. Again, we come back to the purpose behind Zelensky revealing the 3,800 casualties to Friedman during his podcast interview. If North Korea is going to start rotating, as the Lowy Institute suggests Kim wants to do, to further entrench his country's alliance with Russia, then Europe may soon face a massive North Korean problem. Losing America from NATO when Kim wants to send more soldiers to Russia could lead to North Korea ingratiating itself further into the global geopolitical community on the back of whatever settlement Putin might negotiate with Zelensky if the war comes to an end. In other words, the anti-West will get stronger if the 3,800 dead or wounded are just the beginning. But what do you think about Ukraine taking out a third of North Korea's soldiers in Kursk? Is this a sign that Putin's tactics are failing, and is Kim going to send more troops? Share your thoughts in the comments, and thank you as always for watching the video.